All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday and happy Thanksgiving from yesterday to everyone. Let me shuffle around a couple of windows here. Looks like I've got sound going to OBS, so I think we're probably good there. I did remember to press the start thing for YouTube today, so I think we're good on that. Ooh, I can hear myself. That's not what we want. Let's figure out where that's at. This? Okay, found it. There we go. There we go. Trying something different with the chat this time around, so we'll see how the chat goes. Sometimes have trouble where the YouTube chat window that I used in the stream was Adafruit account, which is the moderator, which sees all the messages that are held for moderation. Kind of defeats the purpose if we got it on the screen. So we're trying something new on that front today. Hopefully we're not going to be bombarded with any weird chats in the YouTube today. Try that out. And we're almost there, so okay. Let's see, who do we got? How's it going, DJ Devin? Thank God it's Friday. Seconded on that. Agreed there. Audio's okay, thank you. I appreciate the heads up. How's it going, Paul SK? T. Grover, how's it going? Hi, Tim, and present on this dark, what do I say, Black Friday? Yes, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Happy Black Friday if Black Friday is your thing, or just Friday in general. Fridays are pretty sweet, all things considered. How's it going, Jack in the Shop over there on YouTube and Discord? Beata, happy Friday, how's it going? And Diana Bell, Diana Bell. How's it going, folks? Thank you for tuning in. Happy Friday to everyone, and of course, happy Thanksgiving from yesterday as well to everyone. So my name is Tim. This is the Deep Dive program. This is a weekly stream featuring CircuitPython, and in particular, we're getting into kind of the nitty-gritty of CircuitPython, diving right down into the depths of the ocean, so to speak. In particular, we're working on libraries, we're working on complex projects, we're working inside the core, changing APIs, working on infrastructure for the project, that sort of stuff. And that's what this stream is all about. I will take just a moment, though. Let's take a quick step back in case anybody is new. Let me find my browser here. For anybody that might be new, if you don't know what any of the things I was just talking about are, this is a good place to start for you, circuitpython.org. Basically what we are working on, though, is a version of Python. It runs on these tiny computers called microcontrollers. There are all different shapes and sizes of them. You can see a bunch of pictures of them here on the downloads page at circuitpython.org. These devices all have a tiny computer like this main chip here. This tiny computer can run Python code on it that interacts with other stuff that is plugged in. So RGB lights, keyboard key switches, in this case, alligator, clip, pins, and some more RGB lights. This has a speaker and a gyrometer, accelerometer device on it. It has a temperature sensor. All different shapes and sizes of these things, and we're writing Python code that interacts with different peripherals that are either built into the board or connected up through one of the many available I/O pins, what they call I/O pins for input-output pins. We can connect stuff there, then write our Python code to talk to, so to speak, whatever is connected, interact with it, read values from sensors, interact with buttons to determine when they're pressed, set RGB lights to whatever color you want, that sort of stuff. I must say thank you to Adafruit. Oh, interesting. We did not get the homepage today. Let's see. Must two-factor right this moment before we can see the front page, apparently. I don't know if there's some kind of special Black Friday thing going on, perhaps. Maybe that's the reason why. One moment while I get logged in. I mostly just want to see the front page, but that's It's not letting me to there, so let's do this bit. What's going to change? Come on, there we go. Homepage? Homepage, there we are. Okay, I don't know what was going on there. Homepage, we're there. Feather Friday, apparently, is what it is today. Does that include TFTs? Although I have a fair amount of Feather TFTs at this point. Anyway, though, where I was really trying to go with that is thank you to Adafruit. This is their website, adafruit.com. Adafruit is the company that primarily sponsors the CircuitPython project. So I was telling you about CircuitPython. It's this version of Python. It's an open source project. It's free to use. It's free to port your own hardware to run CircuitPython. All of that sort of stuff. It's free to extend if you want to make it do other stuff. All of that sort of stuff. It is an open source project. You can do all of that. It is funded, though, by Adafruit. They're paying the team who works on the project full-time. They're paying some folks who work on the project part-time, like myself. They're paying us, to work on the project itself, but also all the peripheral stuff, guides, documentation, streams, fostering the community, the weekly meetings, all of these kinds of things. Adafruit is paying for our time to work on this stuff. So thank you, of course, to Adafruit for doing that. And thank you to anyone who wants to purchase hardware from Adafruit in order to help support the project and all of the other fun stuff that Adafruit is working on. And with that, let's talk a little bit more about specifically what I'm going to work on today. Let me catch up on a few of the chats, though. We can definitely do weird if you want. Yep, weird is all good. 20% off any feather, 15% off all items, all store items this weekend. Yeah, thank you, Devin's Workshop. I'm guessing it's probably DJ Devin. Either way, thanks for the heads up there in the chat. And yeah, that looks like what the deal that's going on today. 20% off all feathers, and which that is that mainboard feathers or feather wings as well. But either way, it's 15% off all items, so you'd only be a 5% difference there, even if it's not. So definitely a good day to grab yourself some goodies, some toys from Adafruit, and while you're doing so, you're helping support CircuitPython by purchasing that stuff from them. So more specifically today, what I want to get into, I've grown an extra browser. Okay, that's right, because I pulled this one out is it was making me log in. Today, though, what I'm working on today are a couple of different things inside the core. Well, we'll start with one. We'll see how far we get. If we get the first one, done kind of to my satisfaction for the time being, then I'll move on to the next one. But we'll play it by ear on that front. So I'll introduce the first one, and then we'll get into the other one later on, if so. If you watched last week's program, though, you'll be familiar with these a bit. Last week's program, we worked on displayio core changes, which is what will be my second topic that I get to today if we get the first one done. The first one, though, will be this PixelMap stuff, which is what I have been working on the last day or two. This is some changes inside the core that Jeff was working on originally. Basically, this is a version of a helper class called PixelMap. As of right now today, this class exists inside the LED animation library. What this class does is it allows you to map multiple RGB neopixels together to act as one for the purposes of an animation. So let's say you have a device such as, for instance, this NeoTrellis right here, which has 4x8 grid of neopixels. In this case, the neopixels are underneath these little rubbery buttons. Let's say you have a grid of that, 4x8 neopixels. Or same grid on this NeoPixel feather wing here. And let's say you want to turn on all the pixels in the first column, for instance, and you want to be able to kind of just treat all 4 of those as a single NeoPixel for the purposes of running an animation. So you want to, set them all to green and then change them all to blue and change them to purple, whatever, right? You want them all to sort of behave as one unit. That is exactly what the PixelMap class helps you do. You can define which pixels you want to be grouped together. It will then allow you to access those groups of pixels as though they are individuals. and set their color all at once. And you can kind of build on top of it. You can feed it into an animation so that it can, of course, change the color of those pixels over time, animate something across them, or change the colors, kind of pulsate different things or whatever, right? All that fun stuff. Let me catch up here again. Don't know about Featherwings. Maybe Feather main boards only for the 20% off. All right, but it is still looks like 15% on other stuff, so you're still pretty good to go, truthfully. I'll chat in YouTube if it's on the tablet, so I don't have to switch back and forth. Nice. Yeah, I've been meaning actually to find a tablet or maybe try my phone or something to get an off-screen chat. Right now I've got the chats on my other screen over here. It might be nice though to offload that to like a different device, I think, and have that screen for other stuff, but that's neither here nor there. I'm a lot on, let's see, I'm a lot on the make this little tweak and respin lately, both with my own stuff and with some of the breakouts. Nice. Always fun to make little tweaks and iterations on stuff, right? I mean, one of the things about software and hardware design is like there's always something that comes up that you want to do better, right? Every time you make a thing and get it done, so to speak, as soon as it's done, so to speak, you're already coming up with ideas for things you want to change and do differently. So that's always a fun time as well. Super fast iterations on CircuitPython. Yeah, that's definitely true. If you code with live trial and error on CircuitPython, is amazing. Yeah, in the REPL or just looking at the stack traces from your code, being able to debug that right away just by saving your code pile and rerunning your code file. Really, really nice. One of my favorite things about CircuitPython, truthfully, is the iteration cycle of being able to edit your code, run it, get the output from it, and then make another change and save it and do it all over again. Really, really fast. So PixelMap, that's the class that we're working on. It used to be, or I should say it is currently inside the LED animation library. What has happened though is that Jeff, one of the core developers that works on CircuitPython, has implemented it inside the core. So he added a PixelMap class that is inside the core that does the same thing. It serves mostly the same purpose, but the parts that were the slowest of the original implementation are now much faster because they are inside the core. The core executes, C code much faster than CircuitPython itself executes Python code. It's still plenty fast to do the vast majority of stuff you want to do, but there is no doubt that actual code inside the core is still much, much, much faster. So Jeff has moved some of the slowest stuff into the core to speed it up. I am working on finishing up some of the changes to get it ready to actually merge in. And specifically what I'm working on is the Python layer that is built on top of the core class that will basically re-implement all the same interface, all the same API that the original helper inside LED animation had. So to give you an idea of where we stand right now in this process, we currently have PixelMap. It's inside the core. I have moved it to _PixelMap, which I think I did off stream. I worked on this on stream a little bit last week, I think, I want to say. Don't remember which day, but I think I did some. But off stream, I have now moved this over to _PixelMap, so we have that. And the other thing that I've done, which I also did off stream, was work on the Python layer, work on the class that uses the core class that the user code will actually interact with. So the user code, your code, your projects, your examples, stuff like that, that stuff will use the class from the Python layer, either in LED animation, possibly we'll make a different library for it with a different name. That part I'm unsure of, but your code will use that class, and then internally it will use this core class, which is now in this _PixelMap. The underscore, of course, actually the way to, the way to sort of show the intention that it's like built in. It's not meant for most code to actually use this. It's really only meant for the one sort of Python class here to use it. Maybe this moves to a different library or whatever, but this is really the main thing that should be making use of _PixelMap. Everything else should be using this, and it kind of hides the internals from you. Adds a couple of extra features that are not there by default. Let's see how we let's catch up on the chat here. So true, yeah, with the iterations. What's the difference between PixelMap and RGB Matrix? Wouldn't they do about the same kind of thing? I Cannot, well, so I cannot say for sure because I don't really know that much about RGB matrix. What I think the difference is that RGB matrix helps you filling in like matrix portals, for instance, those big panels of LEDs, which I think of as a matrix portal, although the matrix portal itself is actually just the device and not the panel. Um, but RGB matrix helps you fill in these panels, which we can't actually see a still shot of, I guess, but we get the rotating one here. So RGB matrix helps you fill in these things, helps you draw stuff on them, pretty much as though that it's a display. And then PixelMap is for basically combining multiple pixels to behave as one. So being able to make all 4 of these pretty much behave as 1 pixel, or being able to make all 8 of these in this row here all behave as 1 pixel. So you could just set, a single value to red and all 8 of these will turn on at once. You don't need multiple sort of lines of code to say, like, set this one to red, set this one to red, this one, this one, this one. You don't need a for loop. You don't need any of that stuff. You set up your map, and then you just tell your map, set index 0 to red, and it will do all the rest for you. That's my understanding of the difference, but bear in mind, like I said, I don't know that much about RGB matrix, so yeah, that's what I got. How's it going, Kiyoshi, over there on Discord? Thanks for tuning in. Happy to have you. So right now we have this stuff mostly working. The place where I'm going to jump in is some of the helper methods that generate kind of special kinds of these maps, basically. Oh, I don't have the device plugged in. Let's do that. Plug in the device. I am just going to be using the Neo Trellis for right now, and then we'll also test this out on the Feather Wing there that I've got on the Feather TFT. We'll get to that here in a bit. Let's refresh this. Refresh, reload, reload. One works with addressed LEDs. The other works for matrices of LEDs. Yeah, that's a good point as well, Seagrover. Good difference between the two. CodePy. So the specific place where I'm exactly jumping in is in the what I'm going to refer to. I'm probably going to say this over and over again. I'm going to say the old version of PixelMap, and really what I mean is the currently released version, but it will become the old version if and when this new stuff comes in. So just a heads up, when I say the old version of PixelMap, I mean the one that's going to become old when we get the new one in. It's actually technically the current one still right now, but I'm going to be calling it the old one because I'm working on the new one. In the old version of PixelMap, there were these helper functions called like vertical wing, or no, vertical lines. And there's a horizontal one as well, horizontal lines. And these are basically, they're like special constructors. They basically, they take different arguments than the constructor. So we go back up here to the constructor. It takes a strip, which is a neopixel object. It takes a pixel ranges, which is a tuple or list of tuples or lists. And then it takes a Boolean individual pixels. So that's what's in the constructor. These ones here, though, vertical lines, it takes a pixel object. That part's the same. But then it's a bit different. It takes a width and a height and a grid map. And then horizontal lines is a similar kind of signature. It takes a pixel object, takes a width and a height and a grid map. And these are like helper functions that generate maps for kind of like well-known, I guess, well-known grids or commonly used grid patterns. So basically, there's a real easy way you can use one of these helper functions to generate the map for this 8x4 grid that we have on the Neo Trellis, for instance. That being said, I don't know the code. We're going to have to look in the example to find it, but we may as well grab it because that's the code we're going to be working on, which means that's the code we're going to want to test. Example, I think, where could we, this one maybe map, LED animation map. So this sequence, yeah, this uses it. So got vertical lines. This has given it 8x4, and it has given it, okay, for the grid map, it's actually called another helper function, and it's done horizontal grid map 8 and then alternating false. Let's go look at horizontal grid map also. Let's come back. Horizontal grid map. So that was down. So here, okay, so we have horizontal lines, and then we have vertical lines, and then we have one of each, vertical strip grid map and horizontal strip grid map. So this takes a height, and then an alternating, returns a function that determines the pixel number for a grid with strips arranged vertically. Alternating is whether or not the rows in the grid alternate directions in a zigzag. And the reason why that exists is because some grids are wired like this, where they would sort of grid zigzag back and forth. In fact, I think maybe this one is. We'll see when we initialize it. But this alternating allows it to work with those ones that snake back and forth. Addressed LEDs have built-in pixel memory. Ah, okay. So, and then the matrix, they don't, right? The matrix, you have to keep sending it over and over, the color you want it to be. Is that the idea there? So to start with, I assume, I'm almost certain this will just not work, right? Like if we go pixel wing vertical, and we're already making a pixel wing, well, we're only making the horizontal one these days, actually, I guess. I say these days. I've cut some of the code out. This example came from probably the same place. I've been tweaking it as I've been working on this stuff, though. We will try this. That should be fine. Probably helper is not imported the right way, I'm guessing. We can maybe go... Oh, we got this down here. Weird to import this also. You probably wouldn't want to do this for real, but... Or is that... Oh, that doesn't... Is that not working? Helper? It still doesn't see it. Interesting. Okay, so we would need to be like as helper, or... I assume this will not work. I suppose I don't know. It actually might, it may have worked. We might have like lucked into it just does work because of the constructor we have. I was kind of assuming this would need to be changed. And maybe it still does, but we'll see, I guess, right? Maybe this just works. Let's see if it actually did let's see if it actually did what it should. You know, what's probably going to be a good thing to be able to do here is be able to change back and forth between new PixelMap and old PixelMap. So here's what I'm gonna do actually, is I'm gonna go into my lib folder. I'm gonna change this to be new. And then we're gonna get a copy of the current existing one. Do I want a Python copy, or should I just get, I think we just could get MPY, right? Let's just use Circuit. Circuit install Adafruit LED animation. This way we could switch back and forth and make sure they do the same thing. While that's working though, let's take a look and see if it did actually do something that makes sense. So set up pixels, we set up horizontal wing, we told it 8x4, we gave it this helper for 8, said alternating false, and then we told it -2. So this is one of the things that's now working with the new Python layer implemented, is we can now use negatives. For anybody that did see the most recent stream I did, which would have been on my own channel, not last week's deep dive, but the most recent stream I did, I was working on, maybe we didn't work on it on stream, but I was talking about the negatives not working. That was one of the things we noted that it'd be nice to have. These now do work. And it is, yeah, I do think it's doing the right thing, right? It's got horizontal lines, and it has set the second from the last horizontal line to yellow, which in this case we ended up with 4 horizontal lines. We should be able to say something like print length this, and it should be 4, I think, right? Yeah. We got our 4 lines. We are saying the second from the last, which is this one. The last one, of course, would be down there. So that part is actually seems to be working just fine. Let's do the vertical ones as well, just to test them out, and then we'll try out some more of the examples. One of the cool things about the way these maps work also is you can create multiple maps and then like just like arbitrarily choose which one you want to set pixels on. So you can kind of set up like the same grid of pixels with multiple different sort of contexts or whatever, and then within those contexts you can set those groups of pixels however you want. So it makes it very easy to like switch to entirely different sort of displays on the pixels by having different maps that associate with different sort of visual outputs. The code here is pretty much the same. It's just vertical lines instead. This is interesting that it is horizontal. You'd think that would be vertical, right? Let's try it like this, and then we'll maybe also try changing it and see what it does. So that makes sense, I think. So what would happen if we did vertical here? Would it be wrong? Would we need to change this to 4? Thing is, I don't actually know exactly how this stuff works, and I am a very visual, like, just changing it and running the code and seeing what it does is really the best way for me to learn. Guessing that we probably need to take that down to 4. Interesting. We have 8 things. We have 2 stacks of 4 by rows, I think. Let's loop through them. So we'll go, let's just go time.sleep. We'll just say wait a second. Then we'll say for I in range of can you loop over for group pixel group in, can you loop over them like this? That would be pretty cool. I don't know if this works though. I guess one thing is that we'd want to turn them back off before as well. Ooh. That's probably way too fast, right? That's gonna just go so fast that we can't see it. Anything? Anything. I think the syntax works. I think we need, there might be a way to do it, but I think this is probably wrong. I think for now I'm gonna just use an index. So let's say range of length this, and then we go vertical I. It'll still be too fast though, right? It doesn't seem like it does anything though, because I would expect it to change to the last one, which I would assume would be over here. Should maybe fill also before we loop? Already done. Thing. This is how I code most times through. Just throw stuff at it and see what works. Yeah, totally with you there. Didn't know that. Yeah, dot clock displays versus RGB makes sense. Thanks, C. Grover. Yep, definitely agreed. Let's see, I think the color and brightness setting, not requiring continuous refresh from the microcontroller. That's the addressed LEDs are the ones that don't require the continuous. So it's interesting. I feel like nothing is changing when we do the loop, right? We're supposedly looping, and it is super fast. I will give you that. It's super fast. We probably wouldn't see it live, but I would expect to be in a different position when we're done, because this is -2 is yellow, which is second from the end. So I assume this is the last set in this particular mapping, but this one doesn't turn on, and this one doesn't turn off. Anything turns on. They're just not changing. In fact, even this fill doesn't work. We have auto show off. Which you... Oops, I actually wanted that open. Can you not do auto show? I guess maybe after you create it, you could do it. Seems like you can't do auto show in these special constructors. Where's helper? It's old too, though, right? So also worth noting, at this point, we would be back to the current or old version of the helper. Yeah, just I think it is show, right? It's got to be show, and we don't have a way to pass it through these special, what I like to call these special constructors, these vertical lines like this. This is just it's a class method, but it's kind of more just like a special constructor. It creates an instance of the class. Just creates an instance using a different method signature, using different arguments. And it doesn't have a auto show. Yeah. So we could just set auto show after we create it, though. Not doing anything. Ooh, we can't. Oh, I didn't save it. Why it reran? No, it's still not doing anything. The auto show does not work like that. Auto show equals true. Auto write. I called auto show in the constructor. It actually doesn't exist in the constructor. Where am I? It just something is auto show. Auto show. Auto write. Auto write. Yeah, everything's auto write. Left show. No idea where I got that from. Auto write though. It's weird that auto. It's weird that if auto write is true, then the function you don't need to call is called show. This should either be called write or this should be called auto show. I think one of the two. I don't think I have a strong preference either way, but I think having one be write and one be show seems odd, right? Ah, now we're going. That is what I was expecting totally. Okay, so what really the thing we were trying to visually see here, which we now can, is what this did when we changed our thing to vertical. And basically it made it so that we could get these columns of half-sized rows instead of what we had before, which was full-sized rows. Oh, no, full-size columns happen to be 4. Horizontal strip. So it's defining the direction that your grid is going to go, although grid's going to go both directions. So let's see, where do I start to learn to code? Carrie James, where do I start to learn to code? Devin says, which languages do you want to code? Yeah, I would say even more broadly, what do you want to code? Like, is there a specific project you have in mind? Is there a specific like thing you want to be able to do? Are you trying to play with microcontrollers like these devices? Are you trying to, make like Minecraft plugins? Are you trying to make a game? Are you trying to make a plugin or an add-on or a mod for an existing game? Are you trying to get a job? Like what is your goal? Like what is the actual project or thing you want to do? And then from there, you kind of could narrow down what type of programming stuff you would want to start learning first, and then from there, you could start thinking about how is the best way to learn that stuff. But a couple of steps I think that are important to understand before I could really suggest much of anything. Okay. So let's run the full example of PixelMap thing here for a job entry. So I would say, I mean, it's going to depend a lot on maybe where you're at geographically a little bit. Like different companies, hire different kinds of developers in different geographical places. Um, web development, there's certainly a lot of people who are employed for web development. I would say web development's probably a pretty solid thing to start learning if you know no other programming, and if your goal is to try to get a job programming, I would say like web development's one of the things that might be good to learn. Another one possibly would be like Python and writing tests. I mean, these are some of the sort of like entry level things that you might be doing if you get a job at a larger company, is like starting by writing tests or by making like basic web pages, um, stuff like that. Those are two kind of different worlds, web development and sort of like Python testing backend stuff. But I mean, they're both like fairly entry level as far as jobs go. Truthfully, my best advice would be to come up with something that you are interested in and passionate about. So think of a program that you can make that interests you. If that means that it's a website, a website is pretty much a kind of a program. Then that's cool. Make a website that is about one of your hobbies. Make a website that's about a movie you like, a website about a thing you like, a book you read, whatever, right? Whatever a thing that you care about is, a thing that you're passionate about, make a program that deals with that. So, maybe make a website about one of those things. If it's like a thing you could do, like, if you like playing Dungeons and Dragons or some other game or something, make a program that helps you play that game. Like it rolls dice for you, or it stores your characters, or it just does whatever, right? Make something that is kind of like works along with something that you care about and are passionate about. Because if you make programs about the things that you love, about the things that you're interested in and care about and just do, like occupy your time with, then you'll get more practice. And the really like king of advices, the best advice I could give anybody wanting to learn to program is practice, 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 practice a lot. Write a lot of programs, read back through your programs, change your programs, modify them to do other stuff. practice a lot. The more you can practice, the better you are going to be, and it's easier to practice. It's easier to be motivated to work on stuff that you find interesting and care about. So that would be kind of probably my best advice that I could give is find something that you're interested in, make programs that deal with that, and that's kind of what I think is probably the best way to learn. For web development, think you can't go wrong with JavaScript. Yeah, JavaScript makes a really great language for learning how to code. It's relatively basic. The syntax is not too bad. There's lots of really good resources these days for learning JavaScript at a basic level. Yeah, like Devin says, pretty much everything in the web runs in JavaScript. So if you learn that, you definitely open up a huge world of possibilities as far as different kinds of things you can program if you learn JavaScript. I have a saying for coding: if you're not frustrated, you're not learning. Yeah, that's probably true. Read lots of code, especially read code written by coders you respect. That's really good advice. Yep. Reading code is, half of, if not more of the job, right? It depends on the specific place where you find yourself working, but like reading and understanding code is not, it's not the thing that comes to mind when people think of a job being a programmer, right? When people think of a job being a programmer, I think most people are imagining the writing of the code. But a huge portion of the job is reading and understanding code, whether it's code you wrote, a year ago and you no longer remember it as familiarly, or it's code that somebody else wrote, it's open source code, or it's code that a coworker wrote or whatever, right? It's just company code. Like reading and understanding code and then being able to take what you've understood and implement it to do something, in some other portion. That is a huge skill that doesn't it's not showy or flashy or whatever. It's not maybe as cool or as interesting sometimes as writing code, but it is a huge part of the job for sure. Watching coding streams like Foamy Guy helps. I can code and still learn from other coders. Learning never stops. Yeah, 100% agree with that. The loading never stops. Learning never stops. Websites can lead to anything and everything. CircuitPython website, yeah, for sure. I mean, if CircuitPython is the thing you're interested in and you're looking to get started with web development, make a page that's about your favorite device that shows maybe sample code and pictures. If you're looking for kind of like the next level up, right? If you're trying to level up and make something even more kind of complex or whatever, you could make a web page that interacts with the CircuitPython device. Maybe it connects over the network and sends HTTP requests back and forth to the device, or maybe it connects over USB or connects over Bluetooth. That's kind of a next level thing where you could make a page that interacts with a device directly. Just a whole world of stuff that you can do with web development for sure. Also remember that computer used to be a job for a human, and it still is a little. Yeah, there's a lot, I think, of human element. We're doing a lot with computers for sure, but it's a lot. At the end of the day, like humans are still a huge part of the loop, I think, for sure. Lots of PicoW web server. Yep. We did a trivia project a couple of weeks back that was a web server that ran on the PicoW, and I did not make a fancy web front end, but I did have a web front end. I agree with Foamy a lot of times. Spent reading existing code, found working effectively with legacy code. Feathers, Michael, very helpful. Nice. I'll have to look into that. Working effectively with legacy code. Feathers, Michael. Okay, so we're going to take the larger example here, which is this whole example. We're going to basically run all of this. I guess I'll keep what we have here. Let's just go copy, paste CodePy, and let's call it PixelMap testing. Do I already have that? We have PixelMap tests, PixelMap helper init testing. This is kind of a long name for a file, but if you watch my streams a fair amount, one of the things you'll learn is that I like to keep the files I work on a lot of the times, and I like to give them descriptive names, even if they get kind of long. You guys are awesome. Thanks for the depth of information you all have offered. Yeah, for sure. Let's see here. I have no idea. I may be missing some stuff we need for this. I'm sure there's some reason why it's not going to work. Yeah, we're not setting up the pixels correctly for one thing. Okay, so first of all, also brightness, let's chunk that down. NeoPixels are bright as heck. I don't, anybody is not familiar with using NeoPixels, like even this was on 0.5, which is half brightness, and these are diffused by the little rubber things here. That's still probably going to be pretty bright. 10% will be plenty bright. When it comes to NeoPixels, you know what I always think of when I think of NeoPixels and setting the brightness is that scene in Iron Man where Tony Stark is first like getting the launchers on his feet or whatever, and he's like testing certain strengths of rocket or something. And he like tells the computer to go at like, you know, I don't know, 10% or whatever, and it shoots him through the ceiling or something. This is how I feel about NeoPixel brightness. I'm always like, just a little bit, like we want it real dim, like just barely, and they are still bright as heck. So anyway, let's see, we want to go to just board.neopixel. It should be wherever. Where's it? Oh, okay, here it is. NeoPixel, I think. NeoPixels. Let's look at this. Is a good perfect example of why we save our code sometimes. Just copy paste it. 0.5% is plenty bright. Yeah, they are very bright. Very bright. I guess it didn't rerun because it was crashed. Or I didn't save it. Okay. Why it didn't rerun is I didn't save it. Ah, there we go. So this uses the PixelMap for a few of the animations. This is one of them. Pretty much any of them where multiple lights are doing the same thing at once. Like this one it's using it for, I'm pretty sure. This one I think probably, yeah, because the columns are mapped. This one, yeah. Most of them except for like maybe the first one. The first one where it was just like all of them on like this. This I think is probably not using a map. This is probably just individual pixels. But then all of these, basically all the ones where there's lines. That's probably a better way to say it. All the ones where there's lines, either vertical or horizontal lines, that is the responsibility of the map, is making those lines work. And so right now we are importing the old version of the helper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the rest of the imports on the old version because none of the rest of that stuff's going to change, I think. But I'm going to change the helper to the new. And so then we'll be creating the new type of pixel map, which is using the new core object, and we'll be able to see if it crashes or if everything works the same or what. So far, so good, actually. I think we're good. I really was thinking that these functions would need to change. But it appears they don't. I mean, I guess it does kind of make sense. Yeah, the main thing I was thinking is like this would probably need to change to be the core object, but in hindsight that doesn't really make sense, right? We would want this to still be the Python object. So we would want this to still be what I'll call helpers.pixelmap, not the core pixelmap. And then this helpers.pixelmap, this one holds an instance of the core pixel map here. It basically wraps that instance of the core one. It adds a few bits of functionality, like these helper initializer functions. Also, the individual pixels false. portion of the API. Like, where is that document? Is that up here? Individual pixels here. So this is true false, whether the pixels are ranges or individual pixels when you create the map. The core one doesn't have this functionality. So that's like the Python one, the helpers.pixelmap keeps this functionality, and it will just handle it and send the right stuff to the core one. So we might be good. Honestly, the only thing really that might be left here is, and I probably need input from somebody else, because I was thinking these would have to change, but now that we're here, it doesn't look like they do. So we're actually further along than I thought. Yes, yeah, this Iron Man here, where he's, yeah. Or, oh, this is a different one, though, but this one does accurately depict the brightness of the neopixels as well. If you aren't digging into someone else's old code, you're doing it wrong. Definitely agree there. Let's see. Well, looks like I'm going to play with some individual neopixels tonight. Might sound weird, but I actually wanted a way to make the goggles brighter. Thank you for the idea. For sure. See now why the lines are special helpers. They're great. Yeah. The lines, if you're interested in doing, like, if you have a grid and you're interested in doing more complex things where you have multiple pixels behaving as one, the lines, and I'll say currently the current helpers that exist, the current classes that are made for this are lines. It could actually be different things too, though, right? Like it could be a diagonal one, or it could be the outside row, the outside entire loop around is one group and the inside is another. You can make the groups arbitrary as well. Lines are a good example of what to do with it, with one thing to do, but yeah, you could totally have arbitrary things as well, and treat them all kind of individually, or treat them as groups and as an individual pixel. You could do some fascinating stuff. When Jeff was showing the letter stuff that he's working on, it was making me think like you could have a map that represents where each index is one of the letters. That would be like a primitive way of doing text. I think what he came up with is probably better than that for lots of reasons, but it was one of the ideas I had, is like you could actually make maps that instead of representing rows or columns, each index represents a letter that's like made with the dots in that letter or whatever. Okay. So honestly, really the open questions I think are, should this be in its own library or should it stay inside LED animation? That's an open question. I don't necessarily have the answer, or a particularly strong opinion. I could see upsides and downsides both ways. I don't think it necessarily matters too much, but that's an open question. The only other thing I think is the get range. So right now we have the ability to get the range. I could do something like pixel wing vertical. Let's do it inside of here so we'll actually see it change sometimes. Pixel wing vertical, print a range. Let's say just 0 to 3 for nice and easy. This will print the colors of these items in the map. So sometimes they're all black. You can see it goes to black when they turn off. When they turn on, that goes to colors or whatever. This is allowing us to basically check the colors of the neopixels, and specifically to check those groups, which in this case are those vertical lines inside the grid. The ability to get as a slice like this currently comes from the Python code. Right here is the code that is right now responsible for handling that. Conversely, on the set items, if you're setting a slice, it actually is not handled in the Python code. It actually does go straight into the core code. So the core code is able to set slices but not get slices. And so that's the question, is should the get slicing be implemented inside the core, or should it stay inside the Python layer? And I don't know what difference it makes. I don't know if this is a slow thing to do or not. If it is, then I would assume we probably want to move it to the core. If it's not that slow, then it probably doesn't matter and we just leave it in the Python layer, but I don't necessarily know the answer. So I think what we'll do is let's look for any other tests, first of all. Let's look for any other examples that use PixelMap so that we can actually keep trying them out, make sure all of the examples are going to keep working. Just the one right now. Yeah, just the one. Do I have the Learn Guide repo yet? I don't know if I do. I do. Let's check the Learn Guide repo also. Quite a few that use it here, but are these going to be any that we can do anything with? CircuitPython EcoPio? It would be fun. I have not played with Pio really at all yet. Can't do that. Yeah, no, yeah. The neotrellis isn't quite big enough. Some letters need a fifth row. Yeah, you can't express every character very well. There's some characters you can get away with, but some of them you can't really. I want some Brandolane's Lumos stick. Benchmark a lot of LEDs. Brandolane's Lumos stick. I don't know if I'm familiar with that. So there are a couple others, but I'm wondering what the hardware. NeoPixel Crystal Chandelier, Menorah, the Pio. I'm interested in Pio. I have not done anything with Pios. There's a snowboard. Back to the Menorah, Chandelier. I think I got 2 copies of everything, honestly. In the ukulele, sunflower. Let's look briefly for those real quick. I don't know that I'll be having the right hardware to do any of them, but oh, Braden Lane, excuse me, Braden Lane is the PCB designer. I gotcha. Learn. I'm curious to try this one of these days. I don't have that many strips though. I have one. I don't know that today's the day for that though. I don't know how to spell shin. Just strands or yeah. Oh, rings, actually rings, and then individuals. Aaron's got some really cool NeoPixel stuff. Always interested when Aaron pops in to show and tell to show the latest stuff she's working on. Stuff. We got a couple. We got a Menorah sweater as well as a 3D printed Menorah. Sunflower mobile. Probably is rings. Oh, that one's a strip. Okay. So maybe would be worth double checking them at some point just to make sure we don't break anything. I can't imagine we would now that we've seen it run both ways, but tile grid? Tell it. Create a tile grid with a bunch of common settings. Oh, okay. Okay. Aaron's stuff is amazing and beautiful. Yeah, for sure. So glowy. Glowy and fun. Okay. I think we're good there. Really, the main thing, I'm just going to leave a comment to make sure that this PR here is up to date with kind of my latest, where I think it's at, so. Jellyfish Wi-Fi mesh is really neat. Jellyfish has a lot of applications. I haven't seen that one actually. Meshed jellyfish. I'll have to check that one out. Remaining open items for consideration are is it helper or helper? I think it's helpers, isn't it? With an S? Nope. S. The, uh, the get slice functionality is currently implemented Python code only. To or should be moved or. And here I think we asked Jeff. And then one other thing that I'll mention is the negatives. So right now, negative indexing works because of the Python code. The core itself raises an exception. And then I'll say, speaking of exception, I'll say possible out of range exception. If there's our resident legacy keyboard deity. Yeah. Not Wi-Fi, but mesh Bluetooth. Haven't looked deep into it. Is wide. UIED, never used that before. Not sure. All I know is the microcontroller lights sync together. Very cool stuff. Nice. Oh, you know the jellyfish. I do remember seeing the jellyfish, actually. I think she showed those on Show and Tell. I do remember because she talked about, she showed one and I think made a guide to show the process and then talked about having made like 20 or something. Like she made a lot of them. Kind of perfected the process. I do remember that now. Let's see. Possible out of range exception mentioned by Gambler. Hanging lights, yeah. Kind of like Japanese lanterns with the iridescent material look like a jellyfish. WLED. WLED, not WI. Okay. Should we maybe, let's test one more context as well. Since I've done literally everything on one device, we should probably just double check that we can recreate everything on a different device as well. So I'll use this one also, which is oh, recent streams have me thinking about writing CircuitPython helper to add slicing functionality to displayio palette and group. That would be pretty sweet. Yeah, I was looking around. So the idea of implementing the get slicing inside the core had me looking around in the core to see if I could find anything else that had that functionality. I came up empty, um, but I was looking into palette and group, and I think it would be cool if we had slicing for that. If it can help when using Microlab, thinking that it could improve performance for managing animated display objects. I have a hardware project to complete first, though. Slicing would be pretty cool on palette and in group. I was looking for negative, actually, as well. I meant to check. Does anybody know if palette supports negative? That's probably easy enough. We could do that real quick, couldn't we? Yeah. Okay. So maybe I could go look at palette internally to see how it handles the negative if we do want to implement the negative handling inside the core rather than inside of Python layer like it is now. In the meantime, though, this has compiled. We'll get to the bootloader. These very tiny buttons. Probably this has got my, yeah, the timestamper on it. Which, copy it. Identical backup already exists. This, that in there. And we might even be on pin D6 now. Oh, that is so bright. Oh my goodness. See, I was talking about it earlier. I even said it. I said it earlier, and I still did it. I am like blind now. Even that's still quite bright. Being real about it. That is like nice. This I can like comfortably look at, and it does not hurt my eyes. It does look like we're doing good though. I know it's kind of washed out here. Maybe I could turn this off. It would maybe be not quite as washed out, but it would also be more blurry. So, like I suppose. Honestly, it's still kind of washed out anyway. The brightness is much for it. You can at least see the color from the sort of glow effect, though. Whole face started changing colors. Nice. His eyes, yeah. Uh, okay, yeah. I can't believe I'm usually honestly pretty good about that. Like I've gotten to the point where I instinctually lower the brightness before I run the code most times. Um, but no, I definitely went face first into that one. Turn this back on so it'll wash it out kind of and make it not quite as overwhelmingly bright. Well, it's actually not too bad now that we're on the low percentage, but everything does look good to me as far as that. So we did test it on also a different port and a totally different grid of neopixels, and so far so good. Oh, well, I guess though right now though, yeah, hold up though, because now we are not running, currently what we're running is the real version of the library. So we'd actually want to delete that. We'd want to get our modified one. So of course everything worked the same for there. What we want is our modified one. We are going to put that inside lib. And then what we'll do is we'll change the import of helper. Do it the same way as before, where we could go through and change all of them. I mean, I guess there's no reason not to, right? Let's do that. Oh, well, actually, no. Yeah, we don't need to change it here now because I just pasted the new one. Yeah, I'm thinking the other device where I renamed it to new, but no, we just pasted the new one on here. This is already the new one that does use underscore PixelMap. Yeah. And it does seem like it's running fine. Keep my NeoPixels either turned away or covered up. Yeah, covered up, I do a lot of times. I'll throw paper or something. I don't have one of the acrylic things. I should get the little acrylic ghosty thing that makes them look real nice, but I will, a lot of times I'll put a sheet of paper over it. Just plain white paper kind of diffuses it pretty well. Okay, so we're good on the new version on this device. Everything seems to be going fine here. Okay, put that there. This contains all of our latest updates. We actually were farther along than I thought because I was thinking we still needed some code changes. But it turns out, at least as far as I know, for now, we don't. Unless we want to do the get slicing inside the core, or we want to handle the negative indexing inside the core. Those would be two changes possible. But I was expecting to have to change the Python class tonight, and we actually didn't. So we do have time to get into my next thing, which is also in the core, and this is in displayio land. Frequent viewers of my streams will know that I spend a fair amount of my time in displayio land. It's one of the things I'm kind of naturally drawn to about CircuitPython. This is interesting. Why do we have... oh, okay. I thought this was... Okay, this is not the core. Like, why do we not have the rest of the PRs? I know there's more PRs than this. So in the core in CircuitPython land right now, the thing that's in motion is changing the API for display.show. I was about to start an Instagram API, but it was trying to force me to make a Facebook developer account, and I was like, yeah, no. Yeah, I am with you there. Facebook is, let's just say, not very high on the list of things that I like. Try to leave it at that. So on this effort, this is something that we did actually stream about last week, and the idea here, which we can actually just keep using the Feather TFT for, the idea here is that we want to change the API that is used when you show something on a display. So let's take like one of the most basic examples we can, which is just maybe the display text sort of simple test. Oh wow, I don't have that one in my Facebook yuck. Yeah. That pretty much sums up my feelings as well. Bitmap label flicker. I haven't actually looked at this 10 days ago. I missed this one. Take a quick look at this. Bitmap label has varying degrees of flicker. When used with a display frequently changing data, it's very noticeable and occurs regardless of the baud rate. Switched from a regular label to save memory, but immediately noticed the difference. The regular label has no perceptible flicker during updates. Interesting. We'll have to try this out. I think this will be a different day's activity. But I am curious about this. This is odd. So it's basically just changing the text, flickering. I have not personally noticed any additional flickering of bitmap label as compared to label. But I can't say as though I've like looked super closely for it. And I will say like our display system is not perfect. It is still running on a microcontroller, and it is still relatively new and stuff as well, right? displayio itself only started with like CircuitPython 4 or whatever, so it's definitely not as sophisticated of a display as like if you're expecting like a mobile interface type experience or something. It's not quite there yet. In terms of the snappiness and the ability to move things around quickly without artifacts and stuff, we're not quite there. It's pretty good. It's getting better all the time, but it's definitely not, it is still a microcontroller. That's what I try to keep in mind, is it's running on a microcontroller with like 100 megahertz computer is like on the fast side. So really what we want is just the simple test. I will look into that though, because I am even So I'm always fascinated with displayio stuff, and then even more specifically, label is actually one of the first things that I ever did in CircuitPython. So label is actually one of the things I'm most in tune with. One of the things I'm most familiar with is the label library, display text. Some of my first contributions were inside the label library. I will reset this just because it will turn the LEDs off, I think. I will unplug this and replug it in because it will turn the LEDs off, I think. Okay, this is very tiny. It doesn't really matter for the purposes of this. I could scale it up, sure, we can do this, that's cool. The truth is, though, the size of this doesn't really matter. The main thing that I'm talking about here is the way that we're changing the API for showing stuff on the display. The old API, I'll go back to this terminology where the thing that I'm saying that's old is actually current. The thing that I'm calling new is what what it will be if this stuff gets merged. This is the old way of doing it. The new way would be board.display.root group equals text area. So instead of calling show passing in text area, you're setting text area into this property root group. This would be the new way for showing stuff onto the display. Functionally, it's pretty much the exact same, right? You're still taking the group you want to show and giving it to the display. It's just that you used to give it to the display by calling show. Now you give it to it by setting it as a property of root group. And it's just this is more closely aligned with the intent, right? When you're calling show, you're setting the group that will be shown. You're setting it kind of as a property. We try to use properties when the verb is that idea of like setting, a group into something, setting a thing into something. We try to use properties to express that throughout CircuitPython and the libraries to try to keep things similar. So this was an idea that popped up a couple weeks ago in the meeting. I'm working on implementing it. Right now, we don't have the version of code that has this new thing in it. So we need to get that. Ooh. Let's get tricky here. I think, so I'll go here first. And then I think the none stuff one is where I started working, and we'll probably be going over to that here in a minute. I'm going to do a clean on this just so we flush out the stuff from our old build. And then we're going to make a new build, but of course now we're on a different branch, so we're, technically we're building the same device, but we're not building the same thing. Now we've got different code. Display.io stuff only happens on bitmap label and not the entire display. Yeah, I haven't seen that before. Yeah, that's what that the issue was saying, the bitmap label, and specifically the bitmap label and not the regular label, which is the part that's ultra weird because they are different, but they are not that much different, really. I would be surprised if there were significant artifacts in one and not the other, but it could be. Baud rate has a max clock and will flicker if you're trying to overclock it. Yeah, one of the first things I noticed about that was that it was an external display, and I'm curious if the same thing is exhibited on an internal or one with like the Pi portal, which I think connects via the parallel connection instead of SPI. Like, I think it has more wires. It connects with 8 wires instead of 4 or something. It can send data faster, I believe. So I wonder if those types of displays work the same as well. Is root group really a group or just a layer? So I'm not sure if I understand the question all the way. Layer, I don't think there is a specific thing that is called a layer. Like conceptually, the idea of layering things on top of each other, I think I'm with you. I know what you're talking about. But there is not a thing in displayio that is called layer. There's no object by that name. Root group is just a group. Root group is a regular group, just like any other group. To be more specific, root group is the instance of the group object that is currently showing. So here we're making a text area and we're setting it into root group to say this is the group that we would like to be showing. What we could do if we were to access it before that, obviously printing it doesn't do a whole lot, but just to show you kind of what I'm talking about, if we were to access it before this, root group, it will look up the currently showing group, the same thing that it was going to be doing before. In this case, we can't, it doesn't tell us anything useful about it, but this would actually be this group right here, the group that has this tile grid or this terminal IO, this grid here that allows it to print the serial stuff, and it has its little blinka. That's what would be inside the root group before you set it to anything else. And you can get back to that as well. Part of the same API is making it so that you can get back to that terminal serial out. Try saying, yeah, I'm failing at saying it 1 time regular speed, so I don't think I'm going to make it very well for 10 times fast, unfortunately. It's quite the tongue twister. Can you append to the root group? You can. You can append to it after you create it. So like, if we instead said main group equals group from displayio import group, we said main group equals group, and then if we said main group dot append, no, actually we could say, main group equals group, and then you could go, now we're gonna set it here. Get rid of this for now. Let's get rid of this for now. So let's say we're going to set this, but we're going to go main group rather. And then now that you have it on root group, you could actually go like this, board.display.rootgroup.append text area. So you could add it now that once it's in. Although none of this matters if you're still on the old version of CircuitPython that doesn't have this functionality yet. So let's actually install the version that we just built. Did you just click on the display with your mouse and picked up the display? That was so weird. Oh yeah, I did. In my browser, if I click on an image and drag, it will drag like as though I'm gonna drag and drop the image, even if there's no valid place to drag it to or whatever. And I use that to like point at stuff sometimes. I'll click and like move around it like that. Okay, so we can see that one works. So once you set it to root group here, you can append to it. Theoretically, if you wanted to, you could even actually, just append to the existing one. This would add your label on top of the serial out. Obviously this makes it difficult to see the serial and stuff. You're just writing over the top of it or whatever, but the terminal group, the CircuitPython terminal group, is just a plain old group. You can add stuff to it the exact same way that you can any other group, and you can access it. One way is just by accessing root group before you have set anything else to it. The other way to access it is it has a new constant. So let's change this up a bit. Let's say we did do this. So we would now be showing only our label. Only our label. Oh, the hard fault crashed. All right, well, we want to figure out why that happened. Make it not happen, probably. I think maybe this is partially... Actually, no. Anyway, though, so so right now we're showing main group. If we wanted to, we could go wait for a little bit. CircuitPython terminal. So this will now show our hello world group for 3 seconds and then switch back to the terminal. So this is the second way for accessing the terminal. You can either just access root group before you change it, and that'll give you the terminal group, or you can always say displayio.circuitpython terminal. That'll get you the reference to that group that has the terminal output. It's confusing to call it underscore group if it doesn't act like a group. No, it does. It does. It is literally a group, and it does all the same things that groups do. It is, in fact, a group. It's really just a container for the currently visible group, if I'm understanding it properly. I mean, it is the currently visible group. The property, I guess you could say, setting into the property. I mean, I'm not sure if I understand, I guess, the distinction, but in my mind, like, it is a group. It does behave just like a group does. It just on a display object, this is the group that is being shown. But it is still a group, right? It's not a different kind of concept than a group. It is still a group. It's just the one that's being shown. You can get it if you want to know which group is being shown or get a reference to the one that's being shown, or you can set it if you want to change the group that's being shown to a different one. And either way, you can access it and manipulate it just like a group. So append, slicing, whatever, I forget. There's other functions. I think there's like a .index function, maybe. There's a couple of different functions in group that allow you to do stuff. I'm not remembering all of them off the top of my head. X, Y, all that kind of stuff. You can all do all of it by accessing root group. And so the next thing that I was working on with this was what happens when you want to set it to none. So the way it works today is actually none is kind of a special value that pretty much means the same thing as this. So when we ran this code, it showed our main group with our label, it slept for 3 seconds, and then it went back to the serial. If we didn't go back to the serial, if we just let it go like this, then it will show our label and it will stay there forever and ever and ever. But the old way to do things is if you wanted to go back to the serial group, this did not used to exist. So the way that you would do this before is you'd actually call show, but analogous to calling show in the new way is setting root group, and you would set it to none. And by setting it to none, you would be telling it to go back to the serial thing here. So now we get back to our serial output. But what we actually want to do is make it so that none will display nothing. And so that is kind of the last bit that I am working on this so far right now, is making it so that when you set this to none here, that it would actually show nothing on the display. Conceptually, it appears to be the pointer to the group you want to the display. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I will cop to not having my head fully wrapped around pointers that much yet. So like in my mind, it just is the group that I want to display. But I can see how the distinction between a pointer to that group versus the group itself could be important. And maybe I'm not the best person to like say one way or another on that, since I have only a loose understanding. Like I know what they are and kind of how they work, but not like I don't have a fundamental conceptual understanding of it truthfully. I kind of can use them in code and I know the syntax a little bit, and that's about the level of understanding I have. But I think of it as the group, like it just is the group. Like after you have done this, then accessing it like this, board.display.root group, this, once you have set it like this, this is exactly equivalent to using main group. So anything where you could use main group, the variable, you could instead now just use this, and it would be the same. The code would do the same thing. So it's like a variable that holds that group, the group that's showing. New none for power saving. I don't think it will affect power saving. Yeah, I can't say for sure because I don't know hardly anything about the power the low power stuff, truthfully, so I can't say for sure on that front. My understanding, though, is I don't think it would affect that. Really what it's for is just making the API match expectations. If you didn't know any better and you just read this code, set the root group to none, or, if you read the old version of the code, right, board.display show none. If you don't know any better and you just read this code here, like, what do you assume it's going to do, right? Like the most basic assumption, what I think most people would assume, is that this is going to, show nothing, right? It's going to make it so nothing is showing on the display. And so what we would like is for that to happen, right? We want to meet those expectations. If a person is going to assume that this is going to show nothing, it would be nice to meet those expectations and have it actually do that. In the past, we didn't have this constant here, CircuitPython terminal, so we used none as like a special value to indicate the CircuitPython terminal. Now we have a constant for it. We don't need the special value for it, and so what we want to do is update it so that it actually behaves like it reads, so it does what it seems like it should or seems like it would. Can you show the properties of dir board? Yeah, I can. It will be the same things as if it was, well, I shouldn't say it with confidence. I haven't tried it. My guess is, though, my hypothesis before running it is that it will be the same output as if we just create a new group with like group like this. We'll try both ways, though. So right now we're in the REPL. Technically, I guess root group would have been set to none here. I'll tell you what, we'll take this one out. We'll take this one out. Honestly, we'll just take all of these out. We'll save this. This will rerun if we let it. Technically, it made a hello world label, but it's not showing it because it didn't call show or set root group, right? I'll reset it once too. I don't think it matters, but just because displays are weird, right? They live long. So I'll reset it by unplugging, replugging, just so we get a fresh, like, never have set root group ever on this instance. Then we'll go to REPL. We'll go dir board display root group. Name board is not defined because we didn't import it, which makes sense. So we have append, index, insert, pop, remove, sort, hidden, scale, XY, which are all the properties of group. So they would be the exact same list as if we go g equals new group. If we import it from displayio import group, g equals new group, or g, this will be the same list. And so I did start working on this, but I definitely did not get it working. In fact, I think it doesn't, I think I have like extra prints left in, and I think it, not only that, but it just doesn't work anyway, so. Fortunately, though, I do not call for certain, like, where I'm at here. Okay, yeah. So to start with, let's make a build of this version, get this installed. So what I was trying to do was, I think that something calls display.show and passes none when the board boots up. Because I started trying to change this over to, essentially this is inside set root group. This is when the root group is null, which is basically none in Python land. So this is the code that literally handles when we set the root group to none. And so right now today it's doing this stuff, which is switching back to the terminal. And I tried setting it to none or null, and it was not working. I was crashing. And really what I was thinking is that I think that the initialization, when this board first boots up, something connects to the display and something calls show, and I think that it calls show with none. And so I think what we need to do is find that part, find whoever's responsible for initializing the display to begin with. And I suspect what we'll find is that it's calling display show none, and we need to make it do this, show the CircuitPython splash, and start the terminal instead. It should be doing this stuff wherever that initialization occurs, rather than that initialization calling this with none or null, and therefore causing this stuff to happen. I think that's where we're at, roughly. I need to get this installed in C. Means we need to get back to bootloader. It means you can append a bunch of groups in there. Thanks for indulging my curiosity. Yeah, for sure. I'm happy. Thanks for having questions and being interested. I'm happy to help shed light on anything I can, for sure. And yeah, you could just append to it. So yeah, you could, as like a new way of doing stuff, instead of just changing the group altogether, you could append your stuff on top of the serial. And then you could, like, within your same program, be hiding and showing your own stuff to go back and forth to the serial, if that's something you're interested in. Kinds of stuff like that. So we are currently connected. We're currently just showing output because we took all the shows out. Everything is fine there. What we do want to do, though, is... Oops. Oh, I might have left some mildly not quite a curse word, but pretty close in the print statements. Let me go fix that. I will say I was getting slightly flustered when I was working on this last, because I was really trying to figure out, like, how to check if the thing was null, and I was not understanding very well how to check if the thing was null. And I tried a few different things, and none of them were working. And sometimes when you're debugging, I don't know, does anybody else have this? Sometimes when you're debugging, though, and something, you're not understanding it, you're not working, sometimes it's just nice to put some amusing print statements that amuse you, right? Something that just makes you laugh. And that's what this was for me. I will go find it and change it, though. I'm not nearly as frustrated by it right now, because I just started. And display C, shared module. As I say, if you're not kerfluffled, you're not learning. Yeah, shared module, display C. We'll make it more useful. It's null inside display.show. Start naming functions bad things, yeah. Adding soul to the machine, yes, definitely true. Oops, profane comments, yep. Happens to the best of us, I think. I'd like to think at least. Certainly happens to me. I won't speak for anybody but myself, but it definitely does happen to me. Once you're in that mode, though, like once you're into a problem to the point where, like, you're really, really trying to solve it, to the point where you're getting flustered a bit, anything you can do to just get amusement out of it is helpful, I think, because the truth is, like, the main thing you need to do is just get calmed down, probably. The solution is not going to be any easier to find if you're flustered, so amusing yourself in some small way is helping you solve it, believe it or not, I think. And so what we're finding, though, is that it's null in an instance when I did not quite expect it to be, I think. And so one of the challenges with this is when it first boots up, we can't actually see it, right? Because it's not connected yet. The good news is we could actually see it on the display. This device has a display. So even though we didn't get connected fast enough to see it in our terminal, soul blood for the soul blood god, yes. At my worst, I think I held a key down for 5 minutes out of spite. Nice. Let me, where's my camera? Do I have camera? I can't see it. Okay. So what we see is when it booted up, we did get this. It's null inside display show, and then also inside set root group null. So it was null in here, and then it was also null inside of here. And because it was null inside of here, that is what caused the terminal to get shown. If we got rid of all this code, except for our print, we might as well leave our print, but if we got rid of all this stuff and ran it again, it just won't show anything because nothing will ever start the terminal. And so this time it will reboot, but we just don't. Oh, actually, we got it stuck in a boot loop. That's not good. Yeah, that's not ideal. It's just continually rebooting over and over. Good news is CircuitPython is very forgiving. Pretty sure we can get back to bootloader mode. Be fine. So that's actually weird. I am a little surprised that it loops. I don't know why it boot loops. I wonder if we start the terminal but don't do anything else, will that work? Yeah, I guess let's try to find if there's like one specific part of this that allows it to work, right? Allows it to not boot loop. So I guess, I mean, it would make sense maybe if we start the terminal but don't show anything. No, still rebooting. See, and the thing is, it doesn't get alive enough to even connect, so we don't get any kind of like output about what happened. Slash in group false. So yeah, unfortunately here though, this is where like there's going to be a lot of this. Like I basically just need to keep trying different stuff and then rebuilding and rerunning. So it will be a bit slow. Because while the iteration loop of developing CircuitPython projects and CircuitPython library Python code is really, really fast, the iteration loop of core changes like this is a bit slower, albeit still pretty fast on this computer. I have nothing to complain about the speed of it here. So that got us all the way to here. So basically, basically, if we don't set root group here, then we go to a boot loop. Well, if we do it this way. And then I do also, I'm going to try it out this way because I'm curious, but then I do also want to go look at Scott's comment because Scott has got the voice of wisdom here, I think. He pointed us where we need to look next. We try to actually solve this rather than just poking around to try to understand it. Range. I was not expecting us to see all the same stuff. I was expecting us to get, I guess, probably like a blank screen, or maybe a blank screen with the status bar only. So even if you don't call start terminal, you do actually get to still see the terminal, which is odd. Okay. So we need to figure out what we can put here that won't cause a boot loop. And truthfully, I think it's not so much that we need to figure out what we can put here that won't cause a boot loop. It's that we need to find the code that, when the device first boots up, calls this. And we need to make it not call it with none or null or whatever it's calling with. And I think that's where, hopeful that's where the wisdom of Scott comes in. I think the first time is in common how displayio display construct, which board init calls it. So board init would be when the board is first booting up. Each board has its own like board makefile or whatever. That's where the display is defined, the way that it initializes the display at least. Board init must be what's doing the actual constructing. And so inside of there, hopefully we're going to find some kind of setup stuff that is setting this to null that we can change. And that's going to be display construct. So I guess that would be probably, is that going to be in shared module display? This calls core construct. We might need to be looking in there as well. Scott did say display construct, but it's worth noting that the core, there's almost like two layers inside displayio itself as well. There's like this display core, which is not an object, it's a bunch of functions, and then the actual object, like display object, calls into those functions in display core. So we'll maybe look in there. Basically, though, what we're looking for is like something that's calling show or something that's calling set root group with none or null or something like that, which is, I think, my hypothesis is this is how the terminal gets shown the first time, basically, when you first boot up. Time delay, backlight stuff, backlight, set brightness. Okay, so I added this. Okay, and yeah, see here that we're getting back through some of the layers of some of the stuff I tried. So interestingly, too, we're not getting this, right? We're not seeing this, are we? Oh, no, we are. Inside display make new. Okay. Okay, we're in here. But, and see, this is where it gets weird, right? So I tried to say, so what I was working on the last time I was working on this was I want to know if this is null or not. Inside of here, this has an if statement, if root group equals null. But I was having a beast of a time trying to figure out how can I check CircuitPython /splash here to see if it's null. What I ended up with was this, where I have this function is null, says root group. If root group is equal to null, then it says root group is null. It'll print that out. And in our case, it did not print it out. It said inside display group make new. That came from here. The next line called this. Presumably it went inside of here. Presumably this was false. Therefore it did not print. Let's verify. I'm in a verify kind of a mode on this, since I definitely know that I don't know all of what's going on. And in that kind of situation, it's always good to just verify stuff that you think is true. Because maybe it's not, and maybe that's part of the stuff that you don't know that's going on. So let's say root group not null. I'm going to make these shouty as well, since this one here is shouty. Board init.bootloop equals false. That would be convenient if we could just set that one back to false. Silly me. We just gotta set the boot loop parameter. That would be really funny, actually. I kind of want that, you know, honestly, that might be, I mean, it's certainly for amusement only. It's obviously not a thing that a real user would want, probably. As an exercise in learning how to build a custom CircuitPython that has variables in BootPy, that might actually be kind of fun. Like, if you could make it so that you build a custom version where it checks BootPy, and then in BootPy you have a boot loop true false, and it just loops itself. That might be kind of an interesting way to see if you like understand how to make that layer that will check for variables and act accordingly. Which could be kind of cool. I mean, the boot looping specifically, most people don't want, but it'd be a fun way to learn it. And the broader concept certainly has lots of interesting uses for sure. Although boot looping can be interesting in and of itself sometimes. Okay, so we are here. We got... Okay, so we unfortunately, we have such a small screen that it actually had to scroll, but it does say root group not null. And then it did have to scroll the other thing off. So we can only see root group not null. We cannot see inside display make new anymore. So root group not but yeah, this is where it gets paradoxical. So we checked right here, and it's not actually, in this case it's not root group, it's actually splash, or that's what I'm trying to check, but we called it root group here, I guess. Really, it should just be like a group, right? It's not, this function can get past any group, and it's supposed to be checking if it's null. But anyway, aside from it being named weird, honestly, this is a function that doesn't need to exist. It was just me trying to check if this thing was null or not. It's paradoxical because we get to here, we said root group is not null. So inside of here, this got printed. That means that root group is not equal to null. But if we just look a few more lines down, it's null inside display show. So right in here, root group was null. So like we just checked it here before we called show. Here's where we call show right here. We just checked it. It's not null. We go inside of show. We're inside here now. A few more lines down right there. Inside, it's null inside display show. It's null inside display show. So I don't understand how we went from not null right here. We called it right here. We passed in the same thing. By the time we got to here, now it is null. My guess is that I'm not doing this right. My guess is that I have done something wrong with pointers or with accessing this variable somehow. Would be nice if it could break itself out of a boot loop the way the PC can break itself out of a boot loop from a bad overclock. It can actually do a pretty good job because CircuitPython has safe mode, and inside safe mode, it won't launch CodePy. So if your CodePy causes a boot loop, then safe mode will save you from that. Now, if you modify the core to make a boot loop, then that might exist outside the bounds of safe mode, and so you got to be careful in that situation, but under normal circumstances, the safe mode should save you. Although I don't know that I don't know if it will like kick on after X amount of loops or whatever. I guess that's only if it really like hard faults or if you reboot it with the right cadence. Could it be coming from @CircuitPython splash because of the ampersand? Possibly. So the truth is I don't understand the syntax. So I'm kind of poking around in the dark a bit with regards to that. Meaning something else injecting it into the splash than the thing you're expecting. Yeah, it's possible. It is definitely, that is 100% a possibility. Expected a group, but argument is of type. Okay, expected a group star, but argument is of type group. So I tried once without this. I mean, we could try without root group here, but I think we probably want the star there because this one does have the star. And that's how this one checks here. So the way that I settled on using the ampersand is because when this calls show, it passes ampersand CircuitPython splash. And then once it gets inside a show, it has root group with star. So that's the name of our argument that gets passed in. Root group with a star. And then when we access it here, we go no star. If root group equals null, no star. Which I basically stole from here. Right? I made that function basically the same. This one has star root group, and it checks with root group equals null. So I think that you're probably right. I think the fact is that I'm checking this for null here, and I think you're probably right that it's not... I'm not checking the thing I think I'm checking. The thing I think I'm checking is the terminal group. Somehow I'm not actually checking that. Or the other possibility is that... No, actually, I think that's it. Somehow I think I'm just not checking it. I was going to say the other possibility, but what I was about to say, I don't think it's possible anyway. So this is where I am quite confused. And this is where we started with the print statements and such from before. Because we're in this weird paradox where the thing is not null before we call show, and then by the time we get inside show, just literal milliseconds later, somehow the thing has now become null. So I did actually find this. So unfortunately, I'll say the wisdom of what Scott pointed us to was a place that I had made it to before. And I am not quite understanding it from there. You know what's worth doing, though? What we need to do is I should be looking at main real quick, because this is my branch. I made attempts at changing it. I did all kinds of stuff. Lord only knows what I deleted or didn't delete. I do not know, certainly. So let's take a quick look back at main. If anything catches our eye here. So construct is here. So I'll go look inside this also. No, this code was here. Yeah, okay. So I didn't change any of this. Set the group after initialization. Otherwise, we may send pixels while we delay in initialization. So let's test a hypothesis. If we comment this out, will we not see the serial? Will this even build, I guess, is one thing. Yeah, I mean, there's several layers to this question. Will this build? If it builds, will it boot loop? If it doesn't boot loop, will it show us the terminal? And I think my hypothesis is no. I think this should not show us the terminal anymore, right? Because we're not calling show CircuitPython splash. Okay. Interesting. So something else. Something else sets the group. Something else calls show, basically. Group not null. Yeah, something else has to call show. Right? Because if we don't call it here, how else would it get inside of show? And it's still getting inside of show, and it's still having root group null. So there has to be somewhere else calling show with none or null, I think, right? Null. Well, I see. 451. Reset display. Oh, reset display. Which do we call reset display? Actually, looping back around to the wisdom of Scott, he did mention that. We set auto refresh, but not reset display. So I don't know how we get into here, but something is calling this, and then this is calling show, this is passing null, and really this should be not passing null, instead it should be CircuitPython splash, but the trickiness there is that it used to get initialized when you passed null to show. And ultimately, we're going to take that back out. And so somewhere we do need to actually initialize it, or we do need to call start terminal or something. Reset display. Only one in here. There's a definition, an H file definition, and then shared module inside a knit. Something has called set display. Okay, so in here we have inside display make new, we have root group not null. We actually don't have a couple of the lines that we used to have because we didn't pass null, of course, right? Yeah, the lines we used to have were the lines saying this thing is null. We no longer have those lines because this thing is no longer actually null. Now we are correctly setting it to CircuitPython splash. So do we go back to boot looping if we get rid of this? Yep, somewhere else. Yeah, I will say git grep is a super duper useful utility for finding stuff inside your code. Like finding out who's calling a function or who's calling it passing a certain value or whatever, or where a function is defined. Git grep is like, I have no idea what I did before I discovered git grep, because I use it like all the time now, honestly. If we do boot loop here. Let me catch up also. Got here, yeah, I'm behind a bit. Okay, so it's ampersand meaning something else. Yeah, my understanding of ampersand in C is it's breaking out a variable to be used in another function. I'll watch this and see if it boot loops. Also, if it does, I'll stop it from looping. Got a single loop in here. Single run, I should say, and not looping, so that's good. My understanding of ampersand in C is it's breaking out the variable to be used in another function. It can be dangerous if it's being used elsewhere, and now you've got multiple things going into it. Usually you'll get some errors for unexpected arguments or stuff like that. You're not getting that though, so either it's really sneaking in there somehow, or is that not even an issue at all? Oh, there you go, it's actually sneaking in there from somewhere else. Yeah, the null was somewhere else. Okay, so it's like a construct that's kind of allowing that variable to be used from external places as well. Ampersand, kind of your understanding of it. Okay, that's good. That's more than I had. So every little bit that we learn each time we mess with this. So we're actually good here. So now I guess the question is, what happens if I set it to none? Wasn't hard fault. Okay. So let's look a bit at this code and see if we can and what might have happened. So we got into here, root group was null. We know that because this printed. But we have all the rest of this commented out. Nothing else happened. All we did in here was print. There's no return or anything, so we would have just gone on. So the next thing that would happen is root group. So if root group is equal to self current group, then just return true. In our case, I would assume that that's going to be false because root group is null. I would assume current group is CircuitPython splash, and so that should not be null. Therefore, these are not equal. This should not happen and return true. Maybe we should be just returning true from in here, though, or false even, perhaps. Maybe that's all we need is just to, so if we get to here, we return, we don't go on. That might be what we need, but let's read on a bit. So our next one here, if root group is not equal null, it's not equal null, and if root group is in a group, then return false. The root group is not null, but it is in a group, then we just return false. False here basically saying like false, we were not able to set that group because it's already in a group. You can't put it into the display if it's already in a group. A group can only be in a single thing. In this case, that means it can either be in another group or it can be in the display, in the root group of the display. And that does just return false. So I'm thinking that we do probably just return false here, and that I think that might get rid of our hard fault, because my guess would be our hard fault comes from the fact that root group is null and that we're still executing all this code. So far, we haven't really run across anything too problematic, but my guess is something in here will be problematic. So we had that. If the current group is not null, then set the current group's in-group property to be false. So take the current group and tell it that it's no longer in a group. It's now eligible to be put in another group. Since we're removing it from root group here, we're putting something else there. If root group is not null, so this, we have a couple of these. Here's another one. If it's not null, we go in here, we do update transform. We say root group is in group equals true. So set its property to true. We say current group equals root group. We say self.fullRefresh equals true. We say return true. So my guess is that so root group would be null. We're setting root group into current group. My guess would be is inside what is basically the refresh function, wherever that's at. It's probably accessing current group, and it's probably trying to like loop through it and do stuff. Start refresh. Let's find stuff that's using current group. 11 places. Release display core. So this checks it for null, which is interesting. I mean, this implies that null is a fair value or whatever, right? A legal value that it could be. See, collect pointer, fill area. Like stuff we saw. This is also checking it for null, which also kind of implies that null is a legal value for this. However, what we see is that when we are setting it to null, we're actually hard faulting. So for one reason or another, it's not actually a legal value, so to speak. It's not a thing we can actually do. I'm sure, I don't know where it would be, but something must be trying to access finish refresh. This also checks it for null. Same thing here. So what is after start refresh? What happens after start refresh? So bus free, refresh in progress. Set that to true. Last refresh equals this, and then it just returns true. How does this actually like go? What is in here that causes it to like do the refresh? I don't know. Finish refresh. This one will call finish refresh, but only if that was not null. Let's look inside core. Or this is where we were already? Where we were already. Get root group. Get refresh areas. Here's another thing checking it for null. Checking it for null, calling update transform. There's a lot of stuff checking it for null, so would think that it's okay, but there's got to be at least one place where it's not guarded against null. That's my best guess here is like I don't know, how do we know, let's see. It's been a while since I did a hard fault thing. I think what we need to be able to do though is we need to be able to try to see the core, the dump of like the next level handler here. Which I don't remember. I don't remember how to do. And truthfully, we're over 2 hours already. I'll probably be heading out here pretty quick this evening. So if anybody has any last minute questions or anything you want to say or ask or anything like that, now is definitely the time to get in. I'll be wrapping it up here in just a few minutes. I will be back tomorrow morning for my normal stream at 10 a.m. Central Time. I'll probably be back to working on this stuff because, yeah, this is kind of just what's on my plate right now, what I'm interested in, what I'm trying to plug away at. So if you are interested in this, feel free to join me again tomorrow morning on my own Twitch and YouTube. I'll put links in the the Discord here when I get started. Let's look at one more thing though before I go tonight. Let's look at, where's our browser? What would you do there? Do else for everything and give them unique else prints. Dinner time. Nice. Yeah, enjoy dinner. Hope you have a nice dinner. Kiyoshi, thanks for hanging out for a bit. Hope you have a nice night and a nice weekend and all that stuff as well. What would you do there? Do else for everything and give them unique else prints. We could. I mean, I'm thinking that so like my first inclination is to just like return false from here. And that maybe this would cause it not to hard crash. But I also think this is not likely to be the correct thing to do. Because if we just return false here, that means we'll never update current group to be none. Which means, I guess whatever used to be showing just stays showing. I think that's what I would assume happens. But I do think it shouldn't hard fault, so step in the right direction, just not functionally what we want. If my guess is right, which was yet to be seen well, so. Oh? Group already used. None. Okay. It did not hard fault, but it gave us a group already used when we set it to none. Already used right here. Set root group. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, fair enough. This is just checking the true false. Okay. Does that make sense? I mean, would we return true instead of false, I guess? I mean, yeah. Turning false without understanding if that's actually the problem is a shot in the dark, not the best way to go about it for something as severe as a hard fault. True. That is true. I would agree with that statement, but it is also about the only way I can do it because I don't have the necessary understanding to know anything else to do. So definitely agree, but it is where we're at. Luckily, though, what I will say is like, and I will say this comes with the caveat of like, I'm not telling you that you should do this. So don't take this as like an endorsement of things you should do. You could still mess up your device. What I will say though is CircuitPython is pretty resilient. So while this is pretty ham-fisted to be just going around inside the core changing trues to falses when you're getting hard faults, it is pretty ham-fisted and it could certainly lead to more hard faults. Luckily, CircuitPython is relatively resilient, and even though it's hard faulting, I'm not actually like losing access to my device. I'm not getting locked out, it's not getting bricked. I can still easily just get back to bootloader, either put it back into a known good CircuitPython without any of these troubles whatsoever, or put it back into the next build of my janky one where I'm flipping stuff around internally. This time we did not hard fault or raise the exception. We did set it to none, and so everything, like nothing crashed, but our functionality is not there. We set it to none and we're still seeing all the stuff. So I assume that's not really what we want either. My guess is that we don't really want to return here My guess is that we want to let the rest of this happen. We want to let this get set to null, but we need to track down all the places where this gets used, and I'm thinking there's probably somewhere where there's not a check like this. There's something that's trying to access part of it, even though it's null, and that's leading to the hard fault. That's my guess. We'd have to like get the output from the hard fault, which that will be the last thing I'll do. Is I'm going to head over to Learn Guide. What exactly is a hard fault? I probably cannot answer at least correctly what exactly is a hard fault. I can give you my take on it in my layman's terms. It's basically a crash that CircuitPython is not coded to handle. So normally in CircuitPython, when you do a thing that's like not allowed or whatever, it will raise an exception. Your Python code can catch that exception. You know, you could try again, you could tell the user what happened, you could do whatever you want. Your code, as long as you catch that exception, it can continue running. Everybody's more or less happy. The specific thing you try to do didn't work, it raised the exception, but like, as long as you caught the exception, you can continue going on doing your stuff. A hard fault is like the next level up of a crash. It's not raising an exception. Your CodePy cannot handle it at all. There's nothing your CodePy could do to try to catch that exception and like show a message to the user or anything like that. This is the CircuitPython program itself, the program that runs inside the microcontroller that interprets the Python code, that reads this CodePy file and executes the code in it one line at a time. That program crashed. It's no longer running, so it's no longer able to execute any Python code. It can't catch exceptions. It can't do anything else. It has like crashed all the way crashed. It's no longer even trying to run Python code anymore. That's my interpretation. That's my view on it. That's how I think about it. I don't know if that is like technically accurate. I mean, I would imagine it's not too bad since I tried to not get too technical with it, but yeah, that's how I think of it. That's kind of my understanding. There is a guide. What is the name of this guide? It's like, is it just debugging? Debugging. This is what we need to do. I think maybe this is what we need to do. But I will say a few things. It's been a while. I have not done it in quite a while. I don't remember exactly how. And I have no idea on this Feather device that I'm using here if the pins to do this are broken out or not. My guess is honestly they're probably not, but we'll have to look. So you might need to find a different device. Oh man, we were so close. We're so close. We're so close. If I would have ended on time, we would have made it through the whole program without any of this. They don't go away. They don't go away. They don't go away. YouTube. Oh my goodness. This is... I don't even know. I don't even know how we're supposed to do this. Anyway, this is my problem. I will not just sit here and dwell on this in front of everybody. Believe that. So I tried switching to the chats this time. I switched to my own chat instead of the Adafruit one so that we would hopefully not see those, but obviously that failed. We still see them. So YouTube is awesome. I really like the YouTube chat. I think that they don't need to spend any time improving their filtering of obvious spam. That's true. I endorse that message, but not really. The opposite is actually what I think. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think we need to do this because I think this will let us try to see the actual stack trace from the hard fault. But this guide's pretty outdated. It's for SAMD21s. We'll have to try to follow it as best we can. It's been a while. Maybe I can look back through one of my old videos. I don't remember if I did this on stream or not. If so, then we might luck out and maybe I can watch how I did it before. But we'll basically need to go in and try to like get all this stuff set up and see the output of the hard fault if we can, to try to figure out which line of code is actually causing it. But that's going to be tomorrow's exercise, is doing this, or I'll probably try some more print debugging first. I'll probably try adding print in a few more places and see if I can narrow it down without the debugger. If I'm not getting anywhere with that though, we'll get out the debugger and I'll try to figure out how to use it. But fair warning, like I said, it's been a while. I don't have that much experience with it, so it might just be fair bit of me kind of fumbling my way through it. So that sounds interesting to you, then come back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Central Time. I'll be in the same chat room here on Discord. I'll drop links and we will get back to it and work on this. Let me catch up on the chat and then I'll be heading out here for now. So yeah, it looks like I'm actually quite a ways behind. So okay, there's the last one we did. Yeah, CircuitPython is pretty amazing for that. It can basically set it on fire, hit it with a hammer, and it resets just fine. The equivalent of the blue screen of death would be like the hard fault. Yeah, and it is very resilient. I would keep hammers away, but it's pretty resilient for our software stuff for sure. How nice it would be if other operating system environments were as bulletproof as CircuitPython. Haven't completely bricked anything yet, and I've been trying. Yeah, I'll agree with that as well. Yeah, I have. So part of what makes me so, I guess, brave, if you will, with running weird stuff and just changing trues to false and stuff like that is that I have done a lot of questionable stuff to devices, and just like you, I have not managed to completely brick anything yet. Every single time I have ever gotten into a bad state, I've managed to get back out of the bad state. The vast majority of those times with help from Dan H. So hug report to Dan H for helping me, I think, at least 2 or 3 times get my devices unbricked. And also, obviously, for all the work in the core that makes it so resilient in the first place. I have 20 boards. I'm a horrible coder. Haven't been able to brick a device. +1 for CircuitPython. Yeah. Sounds like an exception. Sounds like exception is like blue screen of death, but hard fault is like an outright black screen or a crash reboot. Yep, that analogy tracks. Yeah, I think so. The exception is like the system is still more or less there. It's telling you, hey, that thing you tried didn't work. Trying to tell you why, which the blue screen of death tries to tell you why. Sometimes it's more or less legible, but how that goes. Whereas the hard fault is like, blink, we're gone, no more. This program no longer exists. I too have failed to brick a CircuitPython device via software, even tinkered with my own CircuitPython builds. What did we see now? I feel like I missed something. We saw maybe the guide. I'm not sure when exactly. I got behind a bit on chat, so I'm not sure what was showing when you asked that. Looking forward to picking this back up tomorrow morning. Do enjoy coffee with Foamy Guy. Yep, I will definitely be having some coffee. Thanks for the stream. Good night, Foamy. Dan H is a legend. Totally agreed with that. Yes. So good night, everybody. Thanks for watching. I hope everybody has a nice night and a nice weekend and all that. Again, in case we missed anybody at the beginning, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Belated. That was yesterday here in the U.S. celebrating Thanksgiving. So hope everybody had a nice day, ate some yummy food. Hope everyone has a good night tonight and a good weekend. I'll be back at it tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Central Time. Until next time, I will see you later. Thanks for watching.